verdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Siempre. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hacia dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
Ooh, you're muted, girl.
Am I still, was I muted?
You were muted. Yeah, we're good now. We're good. We're live. Hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Yeah,
How you feeling this morning, Isaac?
I'm feeling good. Our co-host left us everything to us to do, all on our shoulders. No, not gonna do that to our co-host. Welcome, everybody.
I saw it more as like, it's, us, we're doing it. We're running it today. They left us to, steer the ship.
Right. We might be doing something right if they give us the keys to
right, exactly,
to the castle. How are you doing? Natasha? It is 6 a.m. where I am at, so I know it's around, was it 9? 9.
Yeah. Very, very early.
Yeah.
But, I'm here. I had a good weekend. I got to do some hiking and got to be out in nature, and that's always great. And I always love doing that. So, and that kind of like helps as like a reset for me. So I'm feeling good this morning. What about you?
Tired.
I'm like, woohoo! I'm feeling great. Like,
I'm feeling good off of coming into this week. From last week, a lot of energy is still flowing. I was very fortunate enough to be a part of a speech discussion on Leonard Peltier's birthday. So shout out to the ad hoc committee. Shout out to Leonard Peltier's legal team, which includes Kalanji Changa, who is the founder of this media network. Feeling really, really good. Got some really good conversations of my own on my own network I'm going to be getting into, and also on here too, scheduling some really heavy hitters as far as for guests coming up in the next couple of weeks. That's kind of what I've been working on, what I was doing this weekend, doing a lot of writing. If you guys don't know, I've been writing a book called 7 Lives in 7 Days. And so I'm just wrapping up the little bits and pieces of that. I feel like I'm in a stage that all writers are at where like the book is good, but like you just want to add more shit to it.
Oh, really? Is that a thing?
or I'm also rewriting certain areas of it that I don't know, I like it, and then a couple days later I'm like, no, let's change it up a little bit.
But I mean, the more you sit with something and when you give yourself space in between it, the more when you come back, you see areas where you can improve.
Yeah.
And like saying, places where, you might have thought of something to add or might think of something to add that you hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at now. Like, because the book is relative to certain life experiences that I wish I had, and stuff like that. It's more of a fictional book than it is something that is rooted in nonfiction, but it does have a lot of Pan-African communist aesthetics to it. So it's a book of its own category, I guess you can say. But yeah, that's what I was doing this weekend. Again, even when I'm not working for Rise Up, I'm working for Rise Up.
Always working. Listen, more power to you, because I have to write, but it's not that I don't really love writing. I like to when I feel like it, but not, so power to you, all power to you. You for spending the weekend writing.
Yeah, I actually had writer's block probably like 6 months ago, and it cleared up, and that's what's given me the ability to and I had it for a long period of time where I was only able to write down maybe a couple sentences or something, and then I'd be like, I don't know what else what else do I write. So yeah, I really do enjoy writing, but I think I kind of share the same feeling that you do, where it's I don't really like to at times, but I also know that it is the one thing that I went to school for, and the only thing that will pay the fucking bills. So
that's the story. Living in this system, in this society, that's the story. When all right, there's some things I got to do, even if I don't feel like doing them right now.
Exactly. Speaking
of bills.
Speaking of things that people didn't want to do, I know you're not too really caught up on the Diddy situation, but the diddler has been caught.
The diddler.
The diddler has been caught. What are your thoughts on this whole current situation? That whole situation, from just your knowledge, how much you know about it. Individuals, obviously from our diaspora will defend individuals from our diaspora regardless, tooth and nail. But in the context of this, do you think an individual like that should be defended? After years of not just mental and physical abuse, but also the complete stealing of I was to say articles of albums of see, there you go. My mind's already on writing. But having royalties over majority of Bad Boy artists, the fact that he owns all of Biggie's catalog, he owns this is legit stuff that he for 20 years has made money off of it, and is just barely getting to a point where people who, I mean, from the likes of SWV to, they're all getting, their royalties that were deserved then, they're getting them now. But that's because Diddy was, doing the diddler stuff with it, and whatnot. Just what are your thoughts on the situation? I know it came out of shock last night when it was literally a breaking news. I was trying to figure out how much the Houthis have been packing up the Israelis as of late, and a news break had came in about it. So,
oh yeah, I mean, I think I feel like also there hasn't been much in the news about that whole situation. So I guess this coming in as breaking news, I'm because last night I wasn't up like you were looking through things, but I was sleeping. But just hearing about it, I think obviously the time was coming. Obviously, I feel like we knew that at some point, or most people felt at some point there was going to be some kind of arrest made, and people. One of the things I think about the whole situation is I do think that for a long time, people have known about all of this stuff that's coming out, and we've known for a long time about the way that he's had these deals with artists that he's taken advantage of in terms of, or these lopsided deals where people are not really getting their fair share of the music that they're producing and that they're making. And there's been several artists, like we know, who've spoken out about this many years before this year and everything that's happening now. So to me, I mean, I think I'm just waiting to see where all the chips land. I mean, to me, all of this is like, okay, these are things that, whether it was stuff within the music industry and people's royalties and all of that stuff, or whether it was, the abusive stuff. Like, I feel like a lot of this stuff, there was a lot of talk and people talking about this and things going on beforehand that now, okay, it's coming to light. So okay, let's see where the chips, let's see what, I'm really waiting for the resolution. I'm really waiting to see where this falls, because I mean, we know that within this system, in order for you to become a billionaire, when I see someone's a billionaire, like, I know you've done a lot of stuff to get there, because capitalism is ruthless. And to become the ultimate capitalist, right? To be a billionaire on that status is ruthless. We can't look at any, I don't think that there's any family within, when they talk about those families, the most wealthy families in the US, that exists or whatever. I don't think you can, and even like when we think about like the in England and the Queen and the king, and they're wearing blood diamonds on their heads, just all the time. Like, for you to amass the amount of money that you amass within capitalism, when we're starting to talk about billions of billions and trillions of dollars, there's ruthlessness involved within that process, because that is the capitalistic process. It's a take no prisoners, make no concessions for others. Like, it's a very individualistic, dog eat dog, do whatever you got to do kind of system. So that's how I've been, that's the lens that I've been thinking about it, looking at it through.
Yeah, well, again, like I've been following this, and I speculate again. This is the individual that takes down the real individual that they're going after. In the midst of all of this, and again, this has a lot to do with not just sex trafficking, abuse, mishandling of funds, coercion. A lot of NDAs were signed. A lot of NDAs that people didn't know that they had signed. So again, like, I'm curious as to what the outcome is going to be, just like you, and more curious to that than I am about if it's true, because I think at this point I take everything that has happened to be truthful. I mean, these individuals, find any which way they possibly can to hide their lives, but yet individuals like me and you, easy accessible, you can find anything you want about us. It's
you don't have the money to hide the bodies.
Exactly.
You don't have the money to hide the bodies.
Speaking of bodies, I think the Green Party laid out a couple bodies of their own on the Breakfast Club. Oh my gosh, I alone on my own network I'm going on 2,000 views on just one video alone that has Dr. Butchware and Jill Stein attached to it.
Wow.
What are your thoughts on that Breakfast Club? What they classify as an interview, but again, it was like it was like putting up. I said this in my live yesterday. It's like putting a team of fourth graders up against two college students. You ask the kids are asking questions about the Kremlin, but don't know, like as if they know something about the Kremlin, but don't know anything about the Kremlin. What are your thoughts just on that whole entire interview? I know a lot of people, even myself, have got caught up in this electoral college of confusion, this ball of confusion, on whether I should be voting, whether I shouldn't be voting. You know, especially me as an indigenous person too, you know, it's equivalent to me saying, okay, well, who do I want to give me the next set amount of figurative lashes? And so, you know, that's kind of like how I'm perceiving it. But again, their interview was fucking flawless. They exposed Breakfast Club for being, you know, white supremacists, DNC shills, you know, and so I I can't be nothing more but proud, happy, you know, because you know, minus one thing, you know, I'm not into building Black Wall Streets, because yeah, we all know what that mindset leads to, and where that money actually goes to. So, but yeah, what were your thoughts on it?
So I think, I mean, I watched the interview as well, and I do agree that there was a lot that was revealed that I think one of the things that they mentioned is using the platform, being able to like use that platform to really get across a lot of stuff that they're not able to get across because they're not in debates and they're not doing all of those things. And so I think a lot of key points that the average person, I think, really you know, wants to hear, or you know, is seeing if these other two, you know, the Democrats, the Republicans that are, you know, in bed with each other anyway, that are not, they're not saying. So, you know, when I watch a debate, like when I watch because I also watched the Kamala Harris. Am I saying it right? Kamala? No,
Kamala, I don't care.
When I watched the Kamala,
You won't get that. You won't get that Angela Rye energy from me on here. I don't care.
So yeah, but when I watched the Kamala Harris interview, I mean, not interview, debate with Donald Trump, and I saw the clips of the debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Like, it's always the same. They just say the same thing every time. They're saying the same thing, but they're saying nothing. Literally, they're saying nothing. Yeah. And you sit there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they are just saying nothing. It's like I feel like many of the presidential debates, because I used to watch them like many years ago. Like, I've been watching them for years, since I was like a high school teacher and stuff. And it's always, every debate, they're saying nothing, and they're saying the same thing, no matter who the president is, no matter who the presidential candidate is. They're saying it's the same talking points that they roll over from presidential candidate to presidential candidate. And so I felt like in this interview, you were able to actually hear people talk about and say real things, and not just like the same old talking points. And I think Bush Ware really brought up a good point about the weaponization of Blackness.
Yeah, it pissed the shit out of every single. Well, it did for one particular reason. And if you're an individual like myself that watches, I could watch a 2-hour conversation 5, 6, 7 times just so I can fully understand every single. And that's just a part of my job. That's just how I do it. You know, I have the mental capacity for that. Watching that video over and over and over and over again, I was able to articulate and catch things that people didn't hear, didn't even, you know, articulate.
Right.
Angela Ray is a friend, an actual friend of Kamala Harris. She said that within the context of the video. Then she also says she's a lawyer, so she's not good at math, but then you're going to use math that's given to you that is also propagated by white supremacist talking points. You're going to justify and get mad when the only person in the room that has the balls to say something or has the mental fortitude to call your ass out, you then want to say, oh, what you're not going to do is call me no white supremacist. Oh, no, dear, we did not call you that by any means, by any stretch. We just said what's coming out of your mouth.
And that's the thing about weaponizing Blackness, right? There was something that I saw recently about, and I did think, like, before I move on, I do think, to your point that you mentioned before, that there were two different levels of political education within that.
Most definitely.
You know, like, when I say levels, I mean in terms of depth, right? Like, there's
depth of knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a mainstream way that you can have political education, you know, but then there's the way that you actually do political education when it's goes beyond the mainstream, when you're encompassing all of that, what we're talking about. And I think one of the things to that, people forget that I thought was a good point that they were making, which I find myself having made in conversations with other people when I'm talking to them about this whole, you know, presidential election cycle currently.
That's what
And
we're
they're
calling
trying,
it
yeah,
nowadays.
they're trying to convince me to vote for, you know, Kamala Harris. I think that, you know, when it comes to international politics, foreign policy, people don't think it's important to even think about when we're talking about, you know, why you know, having how much you should weigh that when you're thinking about voting, as if when you know, I think it was Butch Ware who talked about how those foreign policies blow back into the United States. So when people are talking about immigration, that's based on the foreign policy, you know, what's happening with immigration within the United States is a result of the foreign policy that America is carrying out. So for you to, you know, act like, you know, well, yeah, okay, there's foreign policy, but we got to focus more on here. You can't disconnect the two. You cannot. And that's, you know, even his point about, you know, fascism and imperialism being two sides of the same coin.
Yeah,
I know they didn't agree with that, but I agree with it that, yeah, imperialism and fascism are two sides of the same coin. Yeah, one faces inward, the other one faces outward.
Yep.
And that's why, you know, they practice at home. Sometimes when we think about colonialism, right, they did a lot of stuff. When we think about the stuff that they were doing, the horrendous things that they were doing to African indigenous people, they had been practicing some of those tactics within Europe before they even came out to do that stuff to the rest of the world.
Ooh, exactly. There's a book by the name called "Spare the Kids" by Stacey Patton, and to compound on give you an example of that, whipping your children with switches and shit like that, you know, was a white aesthetic that came from Europe. In its earliest stages, I think it was like the 13th century. You know, children used to get beat by their parents because they were drunk. So yeah, there's a lot of history that goes behind, you know, what Europe brought to Africa that then Europeans try and play off like, oh, this you guys are like, no, no, you know, we play. It was a game of catch that you don't want to play no more, you know. You know,
exactly. Now you're trying to get, you know, other people to do it and say it's theirs. But yeah, no. So I definitely think that is very important to like think about and notice in terms of the interview. I think there were a lot of really good things that came out and a lot of clarity for people, and a lot of points that people, you know, didn't know and didn't get to see and, you know, haven't been able to see. I do think that like whatever way that maybe they thought the interview was going to go, you know, it would, I guess, I don't know how the Green Party thought the interview was going to go, but it clearly went in their favor. And I don't know how the Breakfast Club thought the interview was going to go, but it clearly didn't go the way that they thought it was. I don't think it went the way that they thought it was going to go in their favor, if they had a favor that they were, you know, wanting it to go toward or not.
Well, you know, I tell this to people, and I've been following Butch Ware for quite some time now. And when he joined that ticket, every single interview that he got, from my knowledge, and it's Dr. Butch Ware to be exact. You know, the doctor specified, wait till we get to that wait till we get to that BPM. I'm speaking that into existence right now.
Like Dr. Butch Ware.
Dr. Butch Ware, wait till they get to BPM. What? Look at me. He's like, wait till we get to the Breakfast Club. When that Breakfast Club episode, you know, when that hits, you know, people are really gonna see what, you know, true change, what true resistance, you know, looks like. And I've gotten, you know, in the comments on my own network, you know, individuals telling me, because I brought up a clip where Butch Ware basically essentially says, from a material perspective, people are stating, but I don't classify it as it from a material, especially when you make the analogy that you made. He compared decolonization to trying to put toothpaste back into the tube, and that it's not feasible. It's not something that's doable. And so I kind of have a problem with that, because when you look at it through the lens of Kwame Nkrumah, you know, especially through conscientism, we understand that decolonization is the only thing that we have that propels our struggle for liberation. Is that notion of but I think it gets conflated in the in the term and in the definition as to what true decolonization looks like. Decolonization, yes, may look like a bunch of fucking settlers getting their ass packed the fuck up, and on another, boat by the name of USS whatever. But at the end of the day, we also understand too that there are individuals here that have worked in reciprocity with the indigenous people. They've worked in reciprocity with the enslaved descendants of enslaved Africans. The first tip for me is not, let me put a bunch of people on a fucking boat and send them back to Europe. Like that's not me. But in the context of him, I wasn't really feeling the whole decolonization or the whole Black Wall Streets thing. And that's just because I understand, where the roots of that comes from, what really was a black Tulsa, what was, the Central Park, which was Black Wall Street, these were all institutions that uphold the values of a certain, so wish them nothing but the best of luck. But I will say, and I will commend a good interview when I see one.
Because I was trying to remember the point that I was going to make before I went back to your point. But yeah, the weaponizing blackness, because I thought that was such an important thing, that when we were talking about the white supremacist talking points, and I forgot where it was. I don't remember if it was from the other show that comes on Mondays on Rise Up, the other morning show that comes on Monday.
Anti-imperialist feminism.
Yes, anti-imperialist feminism and captive maternal. I believe.
Captive maternal. Yeah, there you go. They got a new name now. I was used to that.
So yeah, but y'all check that. Y'all definitely check that out. And you also subscribe and hit the bell button, and so for the notifications. And I'm trying to remember. I was like, what else? But yeah, all those things. But anyway, so definitely check out the anti-imperialist feminist show that and captive maternal that is on Mondays. I think it comes on twice a month on Mondays on Rise Up. But one of the key things that they said, in the first episode when I was watching was that, your identity does not equal does not equal radicalism or something like that. Like, it doesn't automatically make you radical. And just like your identity doesn't automatically make you, doesn't mean that you can't spew the white supremacist talking points. Just because you're Black does not mean that you can't regurgitate things that, although you may not think that these are white supremacist talking points or things that the same white supremacists would be saying, doesn't mean that you wouldn't say the same things. And you might not even be getting it from them, but you've been conditioned to say the same things. It's just like when we think about, even sometimes, like as a Black person, you might not intentionally want to go to Africa, and repatriate and be on some BS, and I look at African people as, other people that you could, even though you recognize them as, connected to you, but you don't have that mentality in terms of like building a community. You're going over there with the mindset that has been cultivated within the United States.
With a colonial frame of understanding.
Right, exactly. So that's the thing. Like, we're within this system and we're conditioned since the first day we go to school. Okay. And we're being conditioned to take up the identity and the thoughts and the framing of white, the particularly white middle class, that's what we're trained toward to do, to identify and think in that way. So when we talk about, Stephen Biko saying that the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed, that is what's happening. So you may not intentionally be repeating it, but you're already conditioned to do it without even realizing it. If you don't realize it, whether or not you realize it or not, you're already conditioned to think and act in the same ways.
You were this is why I love the Rise Up Morning Show, you guys, because we get into these little areas or these little pockets where we go in deep, and all of these names are popping up, all of these faces. Dr. Marimba Ani, who, you know, we play a video on here, speaks about, you know, we like the job has already been done. All individuals from our community now are just continuing that work through neo-colonialism, through this lens of trying to get individuals to understand a way of thinking that's foreign to them, but also is a toxicity. It's a disease. It's a toxin. You know, to think like as if you're a part of a system that wants you to be a part of it. The only reason that you're a part of it is by process of elimination, so to say.
Or to even want to be part of the system.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. You know, and I think this is like where people, you know, like when W.E. Du Bois talks about the double consciousness and whatnot, I think this is where people choose that opposite consciousness, is where they delve too deep into wanting to have a colonial aesthetics attached to what they think is going to sit in reciprocity with their culture, but it's not. Its sole motivating force is to destroy your culture and manipulate you into believing to this mindset of thinking that we need to be exploiting, that we need to be genocidal, that we need to be fucking diabolical, that we need all of these isms and negative isms, you know, to be able to survive and live, and we don't. We know what they do. We know what they mean, and the best thing we could do is stand against it, and put ourselves in a position like when we go to Africa. I cannot wait to go to Africa. I cannot wait, because I'm gonna go, and I know it's gonna be the best experience that I've ever had in my life. I know that it's one step further into really solidifying, you know, not just my roots there, but also, you know, my connectivity with the brothers and sisters that are exploited by colonialism just as much as I'm exploited by colonialism. You know, so that's why I hate when people say that they go to, like, there was this one person that I knew, you know, they went to fucking Africa and they came back and thought they were so liberated and whatnot, you know, and it's like, well, what did you learn about what you seen there? You know, oh, well, I seen they were, you know, it was a tough situation. You know, I wish them nothing the best. Oh, you wish them nothing but the best.
Right.
You know,
I just wish the best. Them over there.
You know, them over there, you know, but I thought that was your brethren. I thought that was your people, you know? So again, we figuratively, we physically, and we verbally rape the motherland, whether we can believe it or not. When you go there to get some good vibes, or even these individuals, these artists that are out there, you know, mainstream artists, you know, going and taking Afro beats, you know, and bringing them here to, you know, to the colonial, you know, the main occupation, you know, and then that be commodified. And we have thousands of African brothers and sisters that are on the continent, on that continent right now, you know, that make probably the best Afro beats in the world, but they'll never be discovered because colonialism will make sure they never get discovered, because we already found the one Afro beat, you know, producer, the one, you know, said mixer. We found all of them already. We don't need all of these people. We don't need that. That's not the monopoly we're looking for, you know.
And you know, just creating that same exploitation process, you know, recreating it over and over again. We know capitalism is always looking for new markets. You know, how do we take what we already made and continue to do the same thing over and over again? So I think it's time for us. We can, you know, after this, we can go to. You want to go to a break?
Yeah. I was saying before we recorded, we're only gonna go for an hour, and look at us, we've been talking for 30 minutes. Nah, let's go for a quick break, you guys. Break for Black Power. We'll be back. It was a good conversation. I think we can continue this with when the rest of the Rise Up crew gets back from vacation, since they're all on vacation right now.
We gave them a little break. Isaac, that means when we go on vacation, they got to hold it down.
They got to hold it down. They got to hold it down. You know.
Well, y'all all hold it down during this Black Power break.
Exactly. Enjoy some below. We'll be back.
We don't like you because the only information we have about you is what your enemy and ours tell us about you. And you don't like Haitians either. Because you have the same information from the same source about us. When was the last time the New York Times told you anything about Toussaint Louverture? When did the New York Times talk about Jean-Jacques Dessalines? When did you ever hear about what is the mission of this country? They even have us clap to be occupied in 1994. Yes, I stood up against the coup in Haiti. Yes, I stood up for the return of the will of the people in Haiti. Because at the time, yes, Aristide won by 70% of the votes. He is the choice of the people, so he should go back. But when I'm told, okay, he's going back with military occupation, I said, no, that's too expensive. This price, not for me. Most of my comrades were against me. But that's not their fault. Lack of vision, lack of knowledge of our strength, lack of understanding. What does military occupation mean in any country? I don't care where. That is not the problem. Military occupation means prostitution will rise up out of the street into the best families, number one. Because General so-and-so and Colonel so-and-so from the U.S. Army is not going to go in the street and pay $2. No, he's got to have a prostitute. He's going to go in your home, my home, take my sister. Number two, the cost of living must rise at least 15%. That's a fact, whether you want it or not. Any place where there have been occupation, those are the two first results of any occupation. So before, 5 goods for $1. Today, 17, 18, 19, 20 goods for $1. You know how many people cannot eat in this country? 70% of the population is not working. The World Bank says, oh, to make things better, we have a good plan for you. Things are going to get real good, real fast. First, the public workers must be reduced by half. A study proved that every working Haitian feeds at least 7 people. And we only 30% of the population, the working population, is working. Now when you're going to reduce it to 15% of the population, how many people are we each going to feed? And then what happens to the ones who don't have somebody working to feed them? In 1946, Haiti imported nothing of what it needed to survive on a day-to-day basis. In 1960, Haiti did not import its food. Since 1970, there is progress, I think they call it. We start importing things. And today, 1997, Haiti imports even lemon, even plantain, even corn. And don't forget, we are buying it with 20 goods for $1. But remember, Haiti is nothing but an example. It's nothing. Whatever we say about Haiti, we could say it about Zaire, we could say it about Nigeria, we could say it about Togo, we could say it about Ghana, we could say it about Guinea, we could say it all over wherever our people are. And that's why we must make it our business. If we say we're serious about growing, if we say we're serious about going to war, you have to know what's happening in every part of your world. Don't sit here I'm a black American. I'm living in Newark, New Jersey. Well, New York, I have no problem in Newark, New Jersey. We're okay. We have a nice mayor. No, we've got to become involved. Because whatever they're doing to us in Haiti, whatever they did in Zaire, in Lomé, in Ghana, it's coming to you, brother. It's coming your way, if it's not already there.
Yeah.
And it's here.
Hello. Exactly. She always drops, you know, and that whole video can be found on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
But no, I think so much of what she was saying directly relates to even the conversation we were having before we played that clip. But so what you were gonna say, Isaac?
Yeah, and for one, I always enjoy watching that specific video and that specific time period, particularly because, again, what she says now resonates more. What she said then resonates more now. We're living in a time frame where, again, you could say you have a nice mayor, you know, your town's well kept up, you know, he has a, you know, quote unquote progressive. He's from the diaspora. He's progressive. Okay, well, is he for dismantling the same system that oppresses, you know, that oppresses people that don't give them the same comfortability that he has? Again, he's a pawn, he's a puppet for the same system that wants to exploit him. They use him. The same system that he thinks wants to adore him. They need him. They don't need you. We live in in a time period where, again, if you do not know what's going on across the globe and how it connects to imperialism and how what's going on in the Congo directly connected to America with 3Ks, what's going on in Haiti directly connected to America with 3Ks. They tether it to some other country here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and it's a when you do the whole thing, the whole globe, and you start to make its connections, you start to understand that American imperialism is the fucking problem, and it always has. And we're not at a position right now where people can even can be coherent to that. What they're too busy is, again, Diddy, the diddler, right. Is Tyler anti-black to her own blackness? These things. They put all of this drama in front of you to distract you from what's really going on. They don't want you to know that Niger has told France that they have over 60 years to pay back what was stolen from them. They won't tell you that Burkina Faso and Niger were able to get back their gold mines and pack up. They won't tell you these things. They won't tell you that Red Stream, that Africa Stream, that Redfish, are all revolutionary sites and organizations that don't work for the Kremlin, but are being classified the same way that the Uhuru 3 are, as being Kremlin or being agents of the Kremlin. I again, if you're not understanding what's going on right now, is true. We are seeing a contemporary version of COINTELPRO right now when it comes to these indictments. When it comes, and it's indictments on what? Pan-Africanism. Yeah. Pan-Africanist organizations that are deeply rooted and connected on an international level, the same way that this organization, this conglomerate is connected on an international front. So again, we are living under a time period where they're targeting us and we're not doing a damn thing about it, but sitting back and watching and saying, hey, well, what are we going to do?
Like you said earlier, the people said, okay, my thoughts go out to you, what's happening to you over there.
Yeah.
My thoughts go out to you.
It's like, whoa.
But yeah, I think to your point about and I think even when we were talking about before how important foreign policy and the foreign actions of the United States are connected to what's happening locally and domestically here is really important, because we, like you were saying, people will say, oh, well, within my city, and like she's saying, oh, everything's cool, so I don't really have to. And one of the things that she said was about building up, right? When she was talking about you have to build up our understanding, and we need to make it our business to know what is happening everywhere. And because, like we were saying before, when we look at the history, right? Because one of the things that she also mentioned was the lack of us understanding our story. And when we look at it, because people have a lack of our story, because it's already, like we were saying, intentionally done that way, with especially within the public school systems, within the media, people don't know the history to be able to see, or they don't know it deep enough to be able to see that, like, Europeans, when they colonized, when they went out on their imperialist tirade, and they were using the same tactics. They're over here sharing information, right? Oh, this worked over here with these indigenous people. We killed them this way. We did this to their babies. We did this to the women. We did this to the land. We created this particular system of hierarchies and oppression, and this way of systematically killing and raping and all this other stuff, and this is how we're able to get it. And they're over here doing similar things, sharing information, and being inspired by each other's brutality, right? And so if we think that they're not doing the same thing today, sharing, systems of brutality, systems of oppression, tactics of miseducation, of creating poverty, of destabilizing nations, and they're working because when people talk about, oh, the world is smaller today, we're more interconnected. Yeah, they're also the world is smaller today, they're more interconnected. They can work and share their stuff way quicker and more closely than they were when they had to send a letter and send somebody by ship. Today, they're CIAs, they're MI6, they're all the FBI, they're all working together quickly, sharing stuff. Just like when we're thinking about, when people talk about with Cop City and how they're saying, oh yeah, we're gonna not just use this as a military, as a training ground, as a military police training ground for just domestically. We're gonna bring people from outside the United States into to train here too. They're exporting their militaristic tactics as well. So everything. So when she says that we must make it our business to really understand not just where we are, but everywhere else as well, it is very important. Like you're saying, when we think about Pan-Africanism, internationalism, and decolonization here is connected to decolonization everywhere else. Decolonization in Africa is connected to decolonization here. It's connected to decolonization in South Africa. It's all connected because colonization is all connected. Imperialism is all connected. So I think, when she was, she brought up a lot of good points. And I thought one of the other things that was really important, which she said, especially in light of what's happening now, when we think about Donald Trump and, him and what's his running mate? Mike.
JD Vance.
Yeah, JD Vance. When, they're talking about, Haitians eating dogs and cats, and feeding false degenerate stories like that about Haitians, which we know the U.S. has done over and over and over and over again. What is it that they're setting up to do when you're really compounding on that, right? Just like she said, they're telling you false stories about us to make you think about us in a certain way. And they're telling us stories about you for us to look at you a certain way. And then they're lining it up so that when they do go in and to occupy militarily and to do and to destabilize more, that you don't even think that you need to, because they've already dehumanized the people to the point where you think, oh, well, those people, they, this is what they do. So they need the US to go in there and intervene, and they need the UN to send in military occupation. So how is it, again, like when we're thinking about the information that we're being taught, how we're being primed mentally and even spiritually, how we're being primed to disassociate with our people and the causes that are happening, and even economically primed, right? To disassociate and not do our work of being and working toward realizing like, a Pan-African liberation in the way that it needs to be. So I thought like, yeah, I mean, like you said, that, that piece, she touches on so many important things that directly relate and speak so loudly to our current times, even though, this was in the 1990s.
Yeah, and I guess below we'll be doing an Emperor Dessalines birthday celebration this Friday. Uh, so I will be out on the lookout for that. And I'm glad that you brought up this, the whole Haitian situation right now, because it is something that a lot of individuals are not wanting to talk about. They don't want to talk about the fact that, and even try and make the connection to the fact that we have all of these Pan-Africanist international organizations that are being targeted. And then we have a said demographic of people. So this is not just an attack on our intellect. This is not just an attack on our politics. This is an attack on African culture, on Africans as a whole. Okay, we are seeing across the globe that Africans are packing up colonial powers and saying, if you don't get the fuck up out of here, excuse my French, you got, something bad's about to happen to you, man, because we're sick of this. Yemen has already say we're going to get into the article right now. Yemen saying, hey, we'll stop when you stop. When you stop being a fucking fascist and a Zionist, we'll stop being a resistance group. We'll stop being that axis,
Right.
of quote unquote evil you call us. When no, they better be lucky the fact that Yemen, Iran, that Hezbollah, that Hamas, and all of the resistance forces fight in the strategic manner that they do, and that they abide by the laws of Allah, that they abide by a stricter notion of what would be an act of defense, not an act of violence, an act of defense. Again, some of the most peaceful people that I know are Muslims. Some of the most peaceful people I know are Africans. Okay. And right now they're being attacked because they have that conscious, they have that understanding, of humanity. They know how to treat a human. They know how to work in reciprocity. But what stops all of that from being, trickled, into certain areas of the globe is because of American imperialism. Indigenous people have a lot to bring to the table, especially if we hold up 80% of the biodiversity without only being 8% of the population. So what we're seeing right now is an attack on indigenous individuals and indigenous organizations, Pan-African organizations that are deeply rooted in solidarity and in the struggle for liberation. And they don't want that. We're at there. Again, mass escalation. That's what this. I've been saying this for a minute now. Mass escalation. I want nothing more than that. What are we meeting them with? Peaceful, permitted protests. That everybody leaves at a certain time. Come on now.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of mobilizing to do as well. A lot of study to do. I mean, we have a lot of work to do, a lot, because like you're saying, they're organized in a way that we are not organized.
And I don't think people comprehend that. They don't even comprehend the fact they're building cop cities. Where are our compounds at? Well, if we're really serious about a united front, or if we're really serious about a third party that is bolstered, that is steadfast, that is ironclad, why aren't these individuals that are running via the third party coming together, either whether it's they've done it before behind closed doors? I don't know. But what I do see is that they love to distance themselves from each other. They don't like to be in the same room. They don't like to be on the same platform on the same day. They ride with who they ride with, and that's that. So how are we serious about creating a serious third party when you guys aren't willing to say, hey, I'll allocate my votes to help boost the percentage of the third party so that we potentially might have a shot to actually fucking when getting to some stage of real change, or actually looking like a legitimate winner.
Yeah, I think a combination would be much more powerful. A combination of that kind of coalition would
Come
be
on now. Come on
much
now. But
more powerful.
we all know. Well, I know, and I know I've said to my specific viewers, and on here I've specified it as well. 5% gets you a little over 10 million from 10. I think it's like anywhere from 10 to 13 million dollars in public funding to then be a part of the campaign cycle for 2024 or 2026 to 2028. So again, we know why they're not going to allocate votes, because if they allocate votes, it's money. It's money. Like when we look at all of it, it's fucking money. It's at the end of the day, it's money. And that's why when I look at situation, she's like, who should like to? I don't know who your vote should go to, and I think that's a conversation that you should have with yourself, because you have to look at if the candidates align materially, politically, culturally with what you are, and how you operate as an individual, and you make that decision. That's a personal decision. I can only give you and lay out the facts as to what who these individuals are, but yeah, no, I went on that little tangent, but I'm, if we're really serious about like United Front, via the third party, I want to see I want to see in November, you leveraging your votes over to whoever has the best chance of winning. If you guys all align that genocide needs to stop, then that's a platform you guys all stand on, and they could get built, and things can get built off of that.
Yeah,
But
there's definitely a lot of work to do in terms of when we're thinking about organizing and we're thinking about civics, like civic participation and all that other stuff, and building up that we got to be more serious about when we're thinking about these, third parties too. I completely agree when it comes to that. You said you had a story about Yemen?
Yes. So speaking about internationalism, and hopefully we don't get classified as Kremlin on here.
Well, we talked about reparations. We talked about social justice. Like
the fact that people don't even realize that feeding the homeless and children getting adequate meals in school is a Kremlin talking point under the lens of imperialism. So ain't that some shit? But yes. So I'm if you can for me.
Yeah. What you need me to do?
I'm gonna stop sharing, and can you share that article with us?
Yep, I will do that. I'm gonna share it. I'm queuing it up right now.
You're good. To the comment about ranked choice voting, whether it's ranked choice, whether it's star voting, whether it's electoral college, my opinion is that if we are not looking, if we're not if we're allowing corporations to then say to have some vote or leverage as to who a candidate is, then I don't think it's I don't think it's doable. And I think it just it's just putting a different name on electoral college. Is really how I kind of see it. It says right here, explainer. How did Yemeni military strike strike the heart of Tel Aviv, evading high-tech radars? This was something I laughed my ass off. One of two reasons, because every time I see the general from Yemen get online, or I see that someone is posted, I'm like, oh, another win. They got another boat. They got another fucking boat. But in this case, it was them showcasing what they had in May and I believe in June, during a kind of like a presentation, a sneak peek at to what they were doing from their arsenal perspective. No, I'm not going to answer that. Let me see here. So I'm going to read from my article right here.
If you want me to keep it right here, I can keep it right here.
Yeah.
I can scroll.
If you can, yes, scroll. See, I'm being difficult right now. I'm being too much. If you can scroll to where it says by Ivan, and highlight everything all the way down to hospital for treatments, and that's what I'm going to be going over.
Hospital for treatments. Continue after past this, because I'm looking for hospital for treatments, but I'm not seeing it.
So it says right here, in a stunning military operation, the Yemeni military yet again exposed the inefficiency of much hyped high-tech Israeli radar systems by striking the heart of Tel Aviv early on Sunday. The operation was in solidarity with the Palestinians in the besieged Gaza Strip amid the Israeli-American genocidal war. I'm glad that this site gets the vocab right. That has so far claimed the lives of more than 41,200 Palestinians. Again, that is just the number of people that they've been able to uncover from the rubble, which means when all of this is said and done, currently right now, it is well over 200,000 people that have been killed. Well over 200,000 people, probably even more, at the hands of the Israeli-American genociders. It says first of its kind military operations underlined a significant advancement in Yemen's military capabilities and exposes critical vulnerabilities in Israelis' much hyped air defense systems. It says hypersonic missiles was aimed at Tel Aviv, causing widespread damage, panic, and paralysis among a quarter of the illegal settler population in the occupied city and elsewhere. Online footage showed fire plumes of smoke block roads and panic-stricken settlers running for cover. I'm loving that they call them settlers because in most media outlets or articles, they want to classify them as civilians, and they're not. They're not civilians. They're settlers. They're invaders. Some reporters said a number of settlers had to be transported to hospitals for treatment. Israeli emergency medical services confirmed that 9 people were injured various locations across Tel Aviv as they helter-skelter. That's what I laughed at when I was covering this yesterday on my live. It says, ran helter-skelter following the activation of air raid sirens. And this is the guy I was talking to you guys about, Yemen's general. Every time this guy is online, you just know that good news is going to be given, whether it's a ship, a cargo ship being seized, whether it be a destroyer potentially getting packed up or told to divert elsewhere. Thank you as well. I love being on air with Natasha, me and Natasha. They left it all to us today, But every time this guy is on screen, just know that some good ass news is going to come. And I'm slowly learning how to say the catchphrase, the phrase that he says at the beginning, which is like, it's a chef's kiss to what's going on. It says right here, can you go down to what was the targets of Yemeni's operation?
Yep, right here.
All
this
right.
is the guy you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the guy I'm talking about. That every time you see that guy on screen, just know some good shit happened, and the Yemen is safe and well. Says what was the target of Yemeni's operation at exactly 6:32 local time. Israeli early warning radar system detected a threat from about 800 square kilometers in the central part of the entity between Tel Aviv and Al-Quds. Sirens blared simultaneously in 74 settlements, not including numerous suburban and satellite towns, forcing over 2 million settlers in the area to take shelter. Target area spanned roughly 32 kilometers, stretched from Petah Tikva in the north of Kfar Uriah and in the south, and from Bat Yam in the west, and Mohidin in the east. It says region is centered between Ben Gurion Airport and the city of Lod. Missile-wide impact zone suggested that either maneuver mid-flight or carried a MIRV, multiple independent targetable re-entry vehicle warhead capable of striking several targets simultaneously. This theory is supported by Israel media reports, which confirm that the different locations included the Ben Sherman forest, the surroundings of Modin and eastern Tel Aviv were hit despite being up at 25 kilometers apart. Yemeni military services later stated that the intended target was a military site near Jaffa, south of Tel Aviv. And so we get down to which missile was used in the operation. So as I stated in earlier, they had this military presentation where they showcased specifically two missiles, one of which they named Palestine, which was supposed to project a speed of Mach 8. So I don't know how true that was, but I know that this missile got damn well close to it. It peaked from reports from actual people that were able to break this down and do the math and whatnot. The missile's speed was roughly about 6.7 Mach, which that's fucking fast. That's fast as fuck. You know, they in May and June, you know, made it very clear that they were going to be strategically working on hypersonic missiles, that they were going to be working on this, and they've classified, when you stop your Zionism and your fascism, we will stop resisting that. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So it says right here, if you can highlight, it says, quote unquote, in the second paragraph, it traveled a distance of 2,040 kilometers. Okay. 2,040 kilometers and a half and 11 and a half minutes, causing panic among Zionists. Over 2 million seeking shelter for the first time in history of Israel's enemy. Sari said in a statement hours after the military operation. So that is the Brigadier General Yahya Sari, spokesperson for the Yemeni armed forces. The Yemeni military struck a target near Tel Aviv with a hypersonic ballistic missile. It says right here that the details indicate hypersonic flight above Mach 5 with an average speed of Mach 8.6, likely even faster during its descent. Israeli military radio reported that the missile took about 15 minutes to cover the distance of an average speed of Mach 6.6, further confirming Yemeni's claim that it was a hypersonic weapon. Yemeni sources did not specify the name of the missile, leaving it unclear whether if it was the hypersonic missile unveiled in March and June. In March, Yemen showcased a large hypersonic missile with an implied long range, while in June they introduced a solid fuel hypersonic missile named Palestine, reported capable of reaching speeds of Mach 8. And so I genuinely, if you ask me if I had money to put on this, which I don't, I would say that the one that they unveiled in June is the one that we seen a version of that drop onto the occupied areas. It says both missiles featured movable nozzles, allowing for mid-flight maneuverable. Likely the reason Israelis' radars were confused, causing widespread alarm. And so I think we can probably remove that. And I can talk about the rest in general. So it had one of two motives from what I've been told and what I've been able to look up, is that missile was to check to see how technologically advanced Israelis' defense systems are, which they are dog shit. But we as individuals here that live on this occupation are subjugated to high taxes that then in part get sent to them for their Iron Dome. This is the same Iron Dome that Trump wants to fucking put here. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But the gist of all of this is that, again, Israel has consistently broke international law after international law after international law. They went after Hezbollah's leader. They went after Hamas's leader. They went after Iran's leader. Do you really think that these individuals are going to sit back and just take it anymore? Like I said, they should be lucky that these individuals, are strategic, and that they're not, the quote unquote axis of evil that they say that they are, because they would have packed them up. Israel's not capable of taking on Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestinian resistance, all of the Palestinian resistance forces, Yemen, Iran and its military, paramilitary brigade. The fact that people don't even understand how well equipped Iran's military is. They will pack up Israel in a minute. so I don't really think I don't think people are comprehending how much this can escalate very quickly. The fact that they just created a hypersonic missile that was able to travel over over 2,000 kilometers, and went undetected for a numerous amount of time, and was able to cause this. So I can only imagine if they sent a multitude of these, and if Iran did the same thing. If Hezbollah, Hamas, again, I can't wait. I can't. My birthday again is October 7th, so we might get a part 2 to October 7th. I'm hoping.
I think it's interesting. I mean, and it's not just interesting, but like, I mean, watching the whole thing unfold when people are talking about this possibility of World War III. And when you were talking about before, who's expected to not be violent or resist, and who's allowed to be violent and be confrontational and be, not you're not. It's not that you are. What's the word I'm looking for? Resisting some kind of oppression that you're under, right? Trying to get from it. So, but you are, being directly confrontational. And so I think thinking about the way in which, when we think about as Yemen is doing this and testing, their missiles, and being on the side of Palestine, and saying like, you know what, we can't allow you to just be here and be doing what you're doing in terms of the oppression and the war crimes and the genocide that you're doing, and not back them up. While on the other side you have but while you would have on the other side the US and its allies and NATO being like, well, these I'm wondering what their response is going to be. Like, these Yemenis, they're sending missiles, so we got to get our missiles ready. Like, when you're the ones who are sponsoring genocide, it's like, and so it's just because we know that with what we've seen with these wars that Europeans have created, the last 2 major wars that we've seen, and the level of destruction that they've caused, that they're willing to go to the last degree. It's like, for them, war, there is no accountability. There is no recognition that, I'm doing some really disastrous, diabolical, I'm trying to find like the word to really express the terror.
I'm trying not to cuss right now.
The terror and the brutality and the genocide and just the inhumanity,
yes,
that is going on, and that has gone on for hundreds of years now, under the name of imperialism and colonization, so that you can, ride on boats, ride on yachts and do other BS stuff that really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, while everyone else suffers. And for you to then say like, well, if if you're going to defend yourself, we're going to then say, well, we have to defend ourselves. We're defending ourselves from you. So what are you talking about? So I think it's really interesting. I'm interested to see what happens next, considering this, because we know that the Middle East, countries like Yemen and some Iran, and I feel like they've been kind of calculating their moves in terms of, okay, how exactly do we respond to what's happening, and how do we step in? And I think, they've been calculating it like in a way that is more cautious of, and has a wider or a longer a longer vision of, the future than, what has been done by, the United States and Israel and, all of those, and NATO and all of the people on that end of it, because, they're, and I'm glad that they're standing behind them, because when we think about it, when something's happening in Africa, as Africans, we need to be standing behind Africans. When things are happening in Haiti, like they are in the Sudan, and we talk about what's happening in the coalition in the Sahel, and what's happening when those things are happening, we need to be calculating and standing by in a way that we know gives us an idea of how do we progress, and how do we prepare ourselves, and how do we defend ourselves, how do we resist in a way that's going to ensure a long range, future, in a way that has a vision that is longer than what is being I guess waged upon us right now.
Yeah, and I on my own platform, I talked about how Dick Cheney doesn't change his politics for anybody, and so him voting for or giving his endorsement to Kamala was nothing more than him showing exactly who he's always been, which is, I'm going to stand side by side with the individual who's going to propagate the most consumption, the most profit from my private capital, which is going to be Kamala. We know that if Trump gets elected, it's uber mass escalation that is leveraged, that the government lose leverage to. Kamala, at least they want, I don't know, like I've been trying, I have this notion in my head, that obviously these world leaders are siding with Kamala because they want a new face, they want obviously now a black face, and to represent this time period, so that now they can't say that white hegemony was the is to blame for this. White people are the blame for all of this. That's how I'm looking at this situation. We can't look at either one of these individuals and say, oh, they're going to do the right thing. They're not. They all have one motivating force, which is profit, money, consumption, exploitation of resources, the exploitation of culture. And, when I see Yemen do this, all I question is like, how much more are we going to just have these little minor, strategic attacks? When are you going to pack up? When are you going to pack these motherfuckers up for good? That's just really the question that I have that sparks, this all, which is why, like, in the context of voting, if an individual is saying that they are against genocide, then obviously, yeah, they're a person you should potentially take seriously for that. But you have to dig a little bit deeper on what they mean by that, because in the eyes of RFK, that means still sending money to Israel. And the eyes of, the likes of, a Dr. West, it means a secular government system, which is a little outlawed and a little outdated now. With whoever it may be, you have to really understand what they mean by end the genocide, and that they don't stand with genocide. Their definitions might be a little different, but I know we have another story that we need to get to. So I don't know if you wanted to take a break before we did that, or if you just wanted to jump right into it.
We could do another break, and then
Okay.
After the break, we'll come back. We'll do our story.
Okay. All right. And this is a story too that I'm curious, and I think maybe we should have like multiple set discussion on this next one, because yeah, after seeing that Tyler stuff, I don't know how I feel about. I'm just
we'll get into that after this Black Power break.
Empire, and the social construct of white supremacy. Law enforcement today in the United States has its roots in this history. When we see time after time on the internet and on our cell phones, African men and women being murdered, brutally killed by law enforcement, we ask ourselves, well, how is this possible? Why does this continue? And the answer is very simple. Law enforcement in the United States today has its auspices and its origins in the slave trade, in the appropriation of black bodies for the benefit of the ruling elite and the owners of property. You know, some of you may have heard about the Constitution of the United States. Purportedly, it's the greatest document ever penned by human beings. Let white folks tell it. And it's on par with the Magna Carta. Well, we know what happened in Europe after the Magna Carta, now don't we? How the bourgeoisie and the business class rose to power, and we have what we have today. But the Constitution of the United States had a clause in it that said that all men, and they used men, so all you women in here, yeah, you should shake your head talking about it. I knew they was on some misogynist shit. Yeah, they said all men, and they meant all men. They ain't mean women. They said all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But there was a clause, and this clause was political. This clause was economic. This clause reflected the white supremacist social construct of colonialism, of European hegemony and ownership of property. And that clause said that all men are created equal except African slaves, who are 3/5 of a human being. 3/5. Now, some people would say that, well, what did that mean? You know, what did that mean, that you weren't a whole person, that a slave wasn't? No. What it meant was that the owners of the plantation class, the agricultural ownership class, the owners of the cotton plantations and the sugar plantations, they had a right to vote. And each property owner who was a white male had one vote. But if he owned African slaves, and he owned 3 of them, or 5 of them, he would have an additional vote, because this was his property. This was very unique. You could own 4 cows, but that didn't give you another vote. But if you owned an African, that was your property. And if you owned enough Africans, you can have more votes. So that meant that the large plantation owners in the South could wield their power even though they were small in number. Because there was a point in the development of the plantation system in which African chattel slaves outnumbered their owners. This is important to understand, because when we listen today to the cry, Black Lives Matter, we have to understand the roots of that cry, of that slogan. White people owned black bodies, and they had the right to do with those bodies whatever they wanted to. That ownership of an African reflected the wealth of the owner, reflected the political power of the owner. And law enforcement that arose out of this system had its first organization around the slave patrols. You know, the slave patrols were such that if an African was found off of the property, off of the plantation at certain hours of the day, any white person could stop this African and demand some identification or an explanation as to why they were there. Why weren't they home on their plantation? And who did they belong to? This is the mentality that led to the kneeling in the neck of George Floyd. These crackers still think they own us. These crackers still think our bodies belong to them. And so when organizations come along that demand that black people defend themselves against this atrocious dehumanization, we are labeled thugs, criminals, and violent prone. White Americans think they have a right to kill us, to own us. And so when the plea goes up after the Trayvon Martin trial, in which the murderer of Trayvon Martin got away based on the defense, was acquitted based on the defense of stand your ground. That he had the right, that white people have the right to stand their ground against attack. Not to mention the fact that Trayvon Martin was attacked, not the white person. But anyway, he was acquitted. And a hue and cry went up. A hashtag came on the internet. Black Lives Matter. And when Ferguson erupted after the murder of Mike Brown, Black Lives Matter's hashtag became national. People marched through the streets, black people and whites marched through the streets protesting the murder of Michael Brown. However, we need to understand one thing, that hashtag movements are not liberation movements. That you cannot organize a people's movement and a people's liberation struggle on the internet. So this was then and this is now.
Ooh.
Where you? I'm like, why am I so big on the screen?
Oh, shoot. Welcome to the Rise Up Morning Show on Black Power Media, where we get it right sometimes.
Sometimes. Where Isaac is hiding sometimes and then shows up sometimes. No.
we got to highlight something. Why we're just barely finding.
We got to highlight it. This is breaking news.
We are just finding out that my birthday is October 7th and Natasha's is October 16th, which actually is my great grandmother, my Nana's birthday. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the 16th. Yes, that's the day I was supposed to be born. Mind you, I had 2 days that my mom was given. She was given Halloween, and she was given the 16th, if I'm not mistaken, on my Nana's birthday. Welcome. This is no longer the Rise Up Show. Welcome to the Libra Effect. No.
we gotta find a name for when it's just the two of us.
It's just the two of us. Yeah.
That's why, that when they say, our dialogue is real respectful and knowledgeable, it's because we're Libras.
We're Libras. We're Libras. We already understand. We already know the assignment. We know what to do. We're the best to articulate it.
That's right. You know how to balance it out.
Exactly. We get all flustered when these Geminis and Cancers and
we bring in the Ma'atic energy.
Yeah, we give you that.
That's why we're so knowledgeable, about the justice, the harmony.
Shoot. There is no bad vibes here because we are Libras. Libras don't give bad vibes.
Exactly. Shout out to us. And I know some haters gonna say otherwise. But those are just the haters. But what did you think about any thoughts on what Daruba was saying?
When we look at this system, we fail to realize that every contemporary aesthetic is an aesthetic that was first brought via colonialism. The slave patrols, what are they now? Fucking whole ass police departments that are getting, the fact that New York City police budget is 60 times more than the New York Knicks budget for the whole, or the NBA's budget as a whole. It's like 60 times higher than that. They get billions of dollars. So again, slave patrols are now whole ass institutions that work in reciprocity as they did before with white hegemony. Just in this case, they don't have just dogs. They got tanks, they got tasers, they got shotguns, they got ballistic rifles. They got whole ass fucking, again, tanks. They got helicopters that they could drop bombs on us now. As in, I'm talking about the move. We're not aware via the lack of vocabulary as to how much stuff is still prevalent in current times that was prevalent when our ancestors were around. The ownership of individuals. What does that look like now? I think that looks like in the context of when people own houses and whatnot. The bank owns you, really. The bank owns some substance to you. When you're a singer, you're a songwriter, or you're instead that instead of wearing brands on our physically on our back, we're wearing brands on our backs. You know, brands that suit the needs of white hegemony. Not to quote what's his face.
What is it from? A song? Is it from a?
No. Damn, Jesse. Is it Jesse Williams? Yeah, Jesse Williams. I think it is.
Oh, he said something like that.
He said some shit like that. You know, and it made sense. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and act like it didn't. But I also understand that he works in the constructs and the parameters of white hegemony. You know, and suits the needs of that via Greenwood being an investor in that. That's the last I'll say of that because I don't want no smoke. But
yeah, go ahead.
No, we're not aware from a vocabulary perspective of, you know, the mass level of not just indoctrination, but also the mass level of democratic fascism that's on the rise right now. You know, again, we live under a system that's fascist that gives you two options. You want the woman fascist, you want the male fascist. You want the fascist that you had 4 years ago, or do you want the fascist that's a little quote unquote fine tuned? You know, we live in that's what we're given now, but we're given that also in the constructs of that we're given lies and manipulation. You know, that's also through media as well. How we watch and perceive movies and how they interpret certain circumstances and situations. You know, they don't tell us our history because our history is rooted in their you know, fucking witchery. You know, they won't, you know, they'll never tell us the true story of Patrice Lumumba. So you'll have to hear it from individuals like us that the only thing that's left of Patrice Lumumba after they cut up his body and doused him in acid was a tooth. They won't tell you that they beat the shit out of Steve Biko, made him completely unrecognizable. You know, they will not tell you what happened to, you know, Dr. King and how they shot him in the fucking mouth. You know, they won't tell you shit like that. They won't tell you how, you know, 17, I think it was 17 bullets went into Malcolm from his chest all the way down. They won't tell you stories like this. They won't tell you how they martyred our ancestors, our elders, you know, but they will try and tell us how we need to act though. You know, it's wild. But I could go on this tangent all an hour.
No, I mean, I think what you're saying is on point. Yeah, there's so much when we think about what they won't tell us versus what they will tell us, and a lot of what they are telling us are lies, right? Yeah. A lot of manipulation, and especially when we're thinking about the media, and this kind of connects to the story that I'm gonna be bringing up in terms and what Daruba said when he talked about, you know, doing things on social media and doing hashtags is not organizing, it's not, you know, that's not really where it's at. Like, that's, you know, they've got us through the manipulation. They've got us thinking that as long as we're online saying things that equals resistance, or that equals real organizing, and it doesn't. But also at the same time, where the media is being weaponized, not just through the lies and manipulation that they feed to us, but also how it creates a false world that has actual real time, real life consequences, because we don't understand, you know, the media as a weapon, right? Everything can be weaponized, and we're not thinking about, you know, how this tool created by them is being used by them in the ways that they want. And when they wanted to weaponize it, they'll use it to weaponize it. And when they want you to weaponize it against yourself, you'll weaponize it against yourself. Like, you know, how people are talking about how much people were on social media how many black men and black women on social media talking and all and spreading this and kicking up this divisiveness and fanning the flames to increase the divisiveness between black men and black women and all of this other stuff, because they're getting you to weaponize this, so
Yeah.
this media that they've created, because you don't understand, you don't have that kind of full analysis of what exactly is happening, and when they create these tools, what really are they for? And so that leads me to the story that we talked a little bit about before, but it was about South Africa and Miss South Africa, in a story that was talking about how Miss South Africa, as a beauty queen, when she there, it's the pageant, not actual the person who won, but the story before was about how the Miss South Africa pageant, and there was a woman by the name of Chidima Adestina. Look at me. I should have worked on the name before. I should have worked on the name from last time, but that's on me. Right? How she suffered so much xenophobic abuse because they were saying, "Oh, well, why is she running in this pageant when she's not, from South? She's not South African. She's Nigerian, but her mother was South African and her father was Nigerian, and other people who were in this pageant that were clearly not South African, and that whole thing." So that it became a whole thing, and I reported on this last time. So this follow-up story, I thought it was interesting to follow up on this story, because I think, like we were talking about before with what Bobby Nabello says, it's important for us to think about how are things that are being done in our own particular local settings being mirrored or connected to what is being done in other settings, that where our people are, and how do those things connect, and how are they all part of that same neo-colonial imperialist system. And so she ended up withdrawing. So after that story, when I first talked about the story here on Rise Up, it was just happening. Things were just unfolding. So she hadn't withdrawn or anything. But since that story, she had withdrawn from the South Africa Miss South Africa pageant. And so, I'm just going to get a little bit into that. And then toward the end, we'll talk a little bit more about what the role social media has been playing in this, and how that has led to actual, real life and real world consequences in terms of what's this tension, right? As it says, how a beauty queen became the face of South Africa, Nigeria tensions, and how in the role that social media has played in that. So I'm just gonna kind of highlight a couple of things that are important here. So 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 we know that she was brought up in Pretoria, in South Africa, and she said that life wasn't easy for her before, and that we know that's also South Africa has well, actually, let me just read this little short part in the beginning, actually, before then. So in Johannesburg, South Africa, Anita Odayano Saloran, a 21-year-old Nigerian who has spent her entire life in South Africa, finds it safer not to disclose her West African roots. So they're talking about another woman here, but they're connecting it back to Chidima from who was part of the pageant. So this woman, Anita, she was not part of the pageant, but what has happened has led to people, coming and talking about what's happening between the tensions between being Nigerian and being a Nigerian and being in South Africa, and the tensions between Nigeria, South Africa and Nigeria in general as we find it. But what she's saying, she finds it safer not to disclose her South her West African roots. And she says she does her best to assimilate with her peers and rarely volunteers her origins. So that way she wouldn't be bullied. And this is bullying that she's faced since she was a child, that when she got over there. So I'm gonna just kind of skip down a little bit to talking about where we talk about the debacle that we know that I just kind of like outlined before. So the Chimamanda debacle. I'm only saying her first name because I feel like I'm getting that right. Chidima. So, you know, she, like, again, she was born in Soweto, Johannesburg, to her Nigerian father, and, you know, South African mother. But we know that this had sparked a lot of outrage. And so many insisted that she had no right to represent South Africa in the competition, as I mentioned before. It even says that she was bullied online because her father was of Nigerian descent. And if it had been any other nationality, there wouldn't have been a problem, so Laren said. People even said her father was a drug dealer. Where does that come from? It's an assumption that all Nigerians are criminals. It's annoying. So this is, you know, so Anita speaking about the situation that happened with Chidima. And so it says that Adesina's situation came to a head when a video went viral. And I'll just highlight it for people on the screen. When a video went viral for her celebrating her Miss South Africa qualification with her father, who was dressed in traditional Nigerian attire, the backlash was swift and relentless. And they went on to say, we truly cannot have Nigerians compete in our Miss South America competition. I want to get all the facts. And this was what you know, the statement that was made by South Africa's Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Gayton McKenzie. You know, when this whole thing was going on before, which I reported on previously, and you know that how it gave funny vibes, and yeah, right. So that's if people remember that whole funny vibes thing. So then that statement set off a lot of online abuse, which you know, went into threats, despite the fact that Chidima was born in South Africa, and so was qualified to compete. And like I said before, there are other people who have other, you know, nationalities born in South Africa that did not get the same kind of vitriol that she received.
In what country, or what other continent specifically were these individuals from?
There were some from Europe. There were some from from Asia, I believe, too, as well. I can go back to, you know, because because when I reported that story, I was showing some of the images and some of the people because even if you go to the Miss South Africa website, you can go through and you could see, and people are telling what their heritage is, what their background is, all of that stuff. And you could see there are definitely people there that were not, you know, that had other things, but yet they didn't receive that type of vitriol. And so, yeah, so to continue, we know that the South African Department of Home Affairs launched an investigation. And so where they alleged that her mother had committed identity theft and all this other stuff. But they admitted that after they did all this, they admitted that, you know, that wasn't true. Her mother had not done that. You know, she was actually from South Africa. But all of this, right? All of this from just a woman, an African woman from the continent, right, who has a Nigerian father and South African mother being part of us. If we see, I mean, like, I can go into it, because if you go online to the Miss South Africa website and see the people who are in this, you're just like, why? So we'll get a little bit more into this, but anyways, so let me continue. But so all of that pressure forced her to withdraw from the South African, because imagine you got qualified and now your whole family is being accused of being criminals and all this other nonsense that is not true. Of course, you know that how, like, you know, of course, who's going to want to still go through that? Like, it's not worth it for all of that, you know, just to be in a pageant. Yeah. And that's another thing, right? The whole importing of European practices and ceremonies. this beauty pageant business. That's a whole nother thing. But let's continue. So anyway, so he made the difficult decision to withdraw from the competition for her safety and her well-being of her and her family, of course. And she had put that statement out on Instagram. And so let's move on to where we talk about disappointment, the disappointment in South Africa. So for Solaren, the woman who the article started off talking about, who says like she finds it better to like hide her Nigerian roots. She found her withdrawal really disheartening. She says, I was very disappointed in South Africa. She said, her voice filled with regret. Solaren, who dreams of one day becoming a public figure in the political arena, hopes to educate people about the consequences of the social tensions between South Africans and Nigerians. And then they later go on to say, this young lady, she also says, this young lady was born, raised, and educated in South Africa. Whatever happened before she was born, she had no control over it. She grew up with an ambition of becoming a beauty queen, and suddenly, because of this tension, she has fallen victim. Even if it turns out, which we know already, that it was not.
Yeah.
All of these, accusations were false. But all of that tension and the bullying that it placed on her, was, and she said it's part of the symptoms. She said that she views the bullying of Adesina, I think that's it, as a symptom of deeper rivalry. And also goes on to say that the article also goes on to say that South African foreign relations analyst Senusha Naidu explained that anti-immigrant sentiment in South Africa is Afrophobic, which we talked about again, but cautioned against interpreting the debacle in South Africa as targeting Nigerians more, which is interesting. Also, Naidu said tensions between large African countries were political, economic, and social. So which is something we know that is left over from colonialism, right? Yeah. This whole divide and conquer, this whole, see where there's a place where we can fan the flames and, create tension and create animosity between these different groups and people. So that way we can come in and be, we can come in and make peace. We can come in and, we can come in and be an military occupation. And like Baina Bella was saying, right? Therefore, then you get in there, you're destroying the country, you're destroying the people. And so when we think about, it says, needs aren't being met. It talks, this goes on to talk about what's happening in South Africa with interaction. So it says there are people, they interviewed this one person, Harvest Time Abadir, who's Nigerian. Abadir, I'm saying it wrong. I know I am. I'm just going to say Harvest Time. A Nigerian who moved to Johannesburg to attend high school, and attend high school and later pursued. They said that in person, I haven't faced xenophobia. My interactions have been pretty normal. Online, though, that's where the confrontations happen. So Harvest Time is saying that, like, okay, well, in life, and in the real world, not on online world, that they're not facing, they haven't faced this xenophobia. So we know that like people's experiences may differ in real life, but they do point out that online, though, that's where confrontations happen. And so going back to thinking about how media and social media is being weaponized in a way that then creates more high stakes consequences in real life. And so it says that, I'm going to just skip down here to where it talks about the social media. It says that the social media storm around Adesina even spurred pranks between South Africans and Nigerians on the e-hailing platform Bolt. Here, let me highlight this, which is big in both countries. The taxi app allows users to book inter-country requests. People in both countries took advantage of this last month, with Nigerians requesting rides in South Africa and South Africans requesting rides in Nigeria before canceling them. This so-called Bolt war caused prices to surge, left some riders stranded, and led to Bolt restricting inter-country requests. Like, the level of absurdity that this is, right? And all from doing these, heightening these tensions online, and then doing things that are destabilizing to your own community because of, this, all of these tensions and the ways that they're being flamed, for fan flamed online. And then it goes on toward the bottom. I'm gonna read just the rest of this under being a successful migrant is a crime. It says that Alex Asakitipi, a Nigerian socialist based in Johannesburg, warns that online tensions can have real life consequences. He attributes the conflict to economic rivalry between South Africa and Nigeria. The comments made by some South African ministers about Chidima certainly escalated the issue, he said. Akastipiki, who moved to Johannesburg in 2012, acknowledges that while he experienced xenophobia, most of his South African colleagues have been supportive. I overlooked the subtle hostility, but I've taken precautions like stopping communication with certain individuals. I don't visit them anymore, nor do I invite them to visit me, he admitted. He argues that politics and media narratives often fuel xenophobia toward Nigerians. It's unfortunate just recently that the South African government denied a Nigerian sports team visas. Such actions institutionalize antagonisms. Olorunfemi Adeleke, a migrant rights activist, agrees. In South Africa, it's almost like being a successful migrant is a crime. The moment you succeed, you face a barrage of investigations. Adesina's experience, while tragic, underscores the complexities of South Africa, Nigerian relationships. Analysis says the tensions these tensions, though most visible online, reflect deeper issues that both countries must confront if they hope to foster peace and mutual understanding. Both South Africa and Nigerian social analysts agree that the rivalry doesn't benefit either country or its people. And so I just thought that, that story was really interesting, like the aftermath of it, what happened from when all of the outrage and questioning started happening into, okay, what was the outcome of that? Because in the story that I first reported, that story mentioned how the same kind of questioning came up with another person who had Nigerian heritage in South Africa pageant, but it didn't escalate to this level. But I think what's also interesting in this story is the role that social media and the media is playing within it, to fanning the flames of this tension that exists, and also people not seeing what the root cause of these tensions are. Like Baina Bella was saying, right? They're giving us these stories about you, and you're getting these stories about us through media, and therefore we're having this issue, but you're not really addressing the neocolonialism and imperialism that is creating the actual issues that exist within your country. And then when you buy into stuff that's happening online, and then you take real world action, like that whole Bolt war thing, that further hinders your own community and creates situations and chaos that does not need to exist.
And one thing that in the comments I'm going to highlight out is again, this is the continuation of what was done at the Berlin conference. They divided up Africa to suit European hegemonic needs and understandings and wantings and aesthetics and resources, and it built, paved road, gave the paved roads to, to Europe and whatnot, piping, plumbing, all that fucking shit that they don't even use properly. All of this is to make sure that a country like Nigeria and South Africa don't get on the same tip that the Sahel states on. Okay, well, we're going to start packing up these colonial powers. That's actually something that I might watch today. So thank you. Shout out, to you for that. I really do appreciate it. This is nothing more than the continued destabilization of Africa, and to make sure that Africa does not become united, that they don't become, on the same tip, of understanding. Um, that's messed up that she withdrew from the competition because of this. The fact that there's anti African sentiment in
Afro, what they're calling it, Afrophobia.
Afrophobia, and this even goes to like the conversation that me and you had behind, before the live started, in regards to, like Tyla and the whole MTV movie, the MTV Awards, I think it was, or VMAs, one of the two, where she kind of was exhibiting, some like, and she has in the past, where she, kind of exhibits, anti-blackness on her own blackness, and it's just, oh man, like I you can't see that this is like this is another CIA fucking and funded fucking campaign to make sure that Africans don't get put on the same tip.
Yeah, and I think that, people, and that's why when we talk about what's happening, things that are happening within the US, amongst the Black community, and also things that are happening, in other parts, like in Africa, in this situation with, South Africa and Nigeria, how it mirrors that the creation of tensions and the building up of separation and fighting amongst us, because we're dealing with that here in the United States, right? With the Tyler situation that you're talking about, right? And how much of that is being done online. Because even the whole Tyler situation, I was like, what? Okay. I think, so like we really have to take a step back from social media and stop thinking that, people who are even having some of these discussions in the comments and all this other stuff, like what level of critical analysis are they even coming from? Like, right? Because even now we were talking about cultural differences, right? That's another thing and a lot of us don't think about how people operate within their country and then how they operate when they're in a different country. And sometimes with the way you operate, you bring the way that you operate in one country into another country. And that's because that's how you operate sometimes, because you've been used to operating like that in your country. That's part of your, your environment, your milieu and things like that. So I think that, all of these things, it makes us, because we understand the situation that we're in, because we understand that, our fighting amongst each other is profitable.
Yes.
It's profitable in terms of money, but in terms of land,
viewership,
labor, exactly. In terms of all of it, that we have to really do the analysis to say, okay, what really is the issue here? Is there really an issue here, right?
Right. Or are they just creating mass confusion and
Exactly.
manipulation, within the masses, via social media, by getting people to be, as they call, what'd you say, Afrophobic?
Afrophobic. Yeah, what they call Afrophobic. So that we understand who created these platforms that we're using, right? How they can be weaponized, and how do we actually deal with things on our own outside of these spaces, and not just buy in or dogpile on to whatever is happening online.
Yeah.
But I think, go ahead, Isaac. You'll get the last word, because we short on time now.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think we are. No, I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. And this is a collective effort, what we do here. How we formulate, the shows, and sometimes it's, on the cusp, but that's okay. We're a collective that loves to we love to break down stuff like this. So I just want to say thank you. As much as praise is coming to me, I like to spread it around as well, because again, welcome to the Libra Effect with Natasha.
To a Rise Up Libra Effect international morning show. We appreciate y'all. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Rise up.
Rise up, everybody.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one. Well, the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and that babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pulled and we move. Reactionary warfare, never